Well, folks, as you can hear, my voice is totally gone. This is the result of the revelry and joy that's been happening in Washington, D.C. over the course of the last 48 hours. Donald J. Trump is president of the United States. Again, he was officially sworn in yesterday. If you watched our live coverage, of course, you know that. But he got to work right away. We're going to go through everything that happened yesterday. And boy, a lot of stuff happened yesterday. America's golden age is just getting started. Be here with us for every moment. There's never been a better time to join Daily Wire. Plus, use code 47 now for 47% off your new annual membership. So, yesterday, as I say, lots of revelry. And that meant staying up till all hours of the night, hanging out with a joyous crew of people from all over the country, just excited to believe and feel that their country is back again. And that is because Joe Biden is gone and Donald Trump is the 47th president of the United States. It all kicked off yesterday when President Trump arrived at the White House and Joe Biden had to welcome him home. Here was what that moment looked and sounded like. Welcome home to President Trump as he got out of the Beast, Secret Service car, walking up the steps with Melania to greet Joe and Jill. Jill, who looked as though she was absolutely dyspeptic throughout the entire day. Not a shock, but that must have been a hell of a moment for Joe Biden to have been just the interregnum between two Trump terms. They then shifted the ceremony over to the U.S. Capitol building. That is where the inauguration took place. It was originally scheduled to take place outside. It was extraordinarily cold yesterday in Washington, D.C. As President Trump was introduced to the crowd inside the U.S. Capitol Rotunda, USA chants broke out for the then president-elect, now president of the United States. It was a hell of a moment and a reminder, as we'll discuss in a moment, that Donald Trump's return to office is not the same as when other presidents get elected. And the reason for that is that his return to office is not just a referendum on Joe Biden. It is a referendum on Donald Trump. I've said for many election cycles, usually an election is a referendum on one candidate or the other candidate. This is maybe the only election of my lifetime where it was a referendum on both. And that is because, of course, Donald Trump has been the candidate before, twice. He has won once. And because of that, the American people didn't come up with somebody brand new. The American people were not interested in something brand new. They went back to Trump. Understand that this was a justification of President Trump's first term. It was an understanding by the American people that Donald Trump's policies are the best for the country. I said yesterday on the broadcast that usually in American politics, you tend to see something like a Hegelian synthesis. The philosopher George Hegel, he had once suggested very famously that in politics and philosophy and history, you have very often a thesis, meaning a proposition put forth, and then an antithesis, the opposite. And those two go to war. And what you end up with is a synthesis, sort of a halfway in between. That didn't happen this time. Donald Trump was the thesis. Joe Biden was the anti-Trump antithesis. And the American people said, we are going back to the thesis. It is an utter and complete repudiation of everything Joe Biden. And it is, in fact, a justification of President Trump's policies. It is an absolute endorsement of President Trump's policies by the American people. And that's going to make a huge difference, as we can see, because Trump is acting with alacrity. So yesterday, J.D. Vance, the now vice president of the United States, was sworn in. And I have to say, it was such a sweet scene. Really, really sweet. So J.D. has a beautiful family. His wife, Usha, she was holding one of his kids. His kid had like 3 Band-Aids on her, which if you have a toddler, understand is kind of the norm. Having a young family be sworn in this way with actual children, this is like a restoration of norms election, believe it or not. Joe Biden was abnormal. This is the revenge of the normies. I said this the entire election cycle, and the revenge of the normies took place. J.D. Vance is a normie. Here was J.D. Vance, your vice president of the United States, being sworn in yesterday by John Roberts.
Please raise your right hand and repeat after me. I, James David Vance, do solemnly swear.
I, James David Vance, do solemnly swear.
That I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States.
That I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States.
Against all enemies, foreign and domestic.
Against all enemies, foreign and domestic.
That I will bear true faith.
That I will bear true faith.
And allegiance to the same.
And allegiance to the same.
That I take this obligation freely.
That I take this obligation freely.
Without any mental reservation.
Without any mental reservation.
Or purpose of evasion.
Or purpose of evasion.
And that I will well and faithfully discharge.
And that I will well and faithfully discharge.
The duties of the office.
The duties of the office.
On which I am about to enter.
On which I am about to enter.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Congratulations, Mr. Vice President.
The beautiful seat at the Capitol, that is Justice Brett Kavanaugh, who again would not be on the Supreme Court except for the stalwart work of Mitch McConnell, as well as the stalwart work of President Donald J. Trump, who stuck with him when Democrats launched horrible attacks against Kavanaugh, swearing in J.D. Vance, who took enough slings and arrows of his own right there. And then, of course, it was time for the president-elect of the United States to become the president of the United States, Donald J. Trump, taking the oath of office as president of the United States for the second time, this time being sworn in by John Roberts, who, by the way, has a terrible record of swearing in presidents. He didn't wait for Melania to arrive with the family Bible. So that was his second time screwing up the inauguration. He actually screwed up the inauguration of Barack Obama so badly they had to do it in the back room. Not a shock to me, since I didn't think he's a very good justice. In any case, here he was swearing in Donald John Trump as your 47th president of the United States.
Please raise your right hand and repeat after me. I, Donald John Trump, do solemnly swear.
I, Donald John Trump, do solemnly swear.
That I will faithfully execute.
That I will faithfully execute.
The office of President of the United States.
The office of President of the United States.
And will, to the best of my ability.
And will, to the best of my ability.
Preserve, protect, and defend.
Preserve, protect, and defend.
The Constitution of the United States.
The Constitution of the United States.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Congratulations, Mr. President.
And with that, Donald Trump was the 47th president of the United States. He then proceeded to give his inaugural address. His inaugural address was kind of astonishing. It was much shorter than he typically goes. We had an over-under going on in the studio. I was suggesting that President Trump, I've seen President Trump speak 1,000 times. I've been at his events in person, and President Trump likes to go. I thought that he was going to go for 75 minutes. Instead, he went for 29 very pointed minutes. The speech started off with him suggesting the American people have spoken, and that a new golden age was here. Here was the president of the United States in his second inaugural address.
Many people thought it was impossible for me to stage such a historic political comeback. But as you see today, here I am. The American people have spoken. I stand before you now as proof that you should never believe that something is impossible to do. In America, the impossible is what we do best.
And this was the message that President Trump was spreading throughout his inaugural address. Now, the media focused in on the first half of the address, in which he basically listed out all the reasons why the last 4 years have been a disaster, with Joe Biden sitting right there. It must have been super awkward for President Biden and the actual president, Jill Biden, to have all of their failings listed off. But once again, the reason that Donald Trump is justified in doing this is his election is a repudiation of Joe Biden. There is no other way to read it. There's no other way to read it. Joe Biden was elected to stop Donald Trump by the left. And then the American people immediately reversed themselves and realized what a gigantic mistake they had made and put back in place the person that Joe Biden had defeated in the 2020 election. That is a complete repudiation of Joe Biden, period. End of story. We'll get to more from President Trump's second inaugural address in a second. First, you're going to love our friends over at Legacy Box. They created the safest and easiest way to preserve those precious memories trapped on old media you can't watch anymore. Think about it. Who still has a working VCR or film projector? Legacy Box makes revisiting these memories incredibly simple. You just fill their box with your old tapes, film, pictures, and then you send it back. Their professional team handles everything by hand right here in the United States. Before you know it, you'll receive your originals back along with everything digitized onto a thumb drive or stored safely in the cloud. It's like magic. We've actually done this myself. My family and I, we sent in old tapes, and suddenly I can see my grandparents when they were young again, because those were all on film reels. We had those transferred on over to digital format. Legacy Box makes it easy and convenient to restore and rewatch all those memories that have been lost to outdated media. For a limited time, get started preserving your past. Save 50%. Go to legacybox.com/Shapiro and revisit and share special memories from your past. Legacybox.com/Shapiro. It makes an incredible present for friends and family. Go check it out. Give yourself that present. Those memories, they're going to disappear unless you preserve them. Legacy Box will help you do it. Go check them out. Legacybox.com/Shapiro. Also, start 2025 off right. Black Rifle Coffee helps you wake up every morning feeling dialed in, ready to make the most of your day so you can make the best of your year. I'll be honest with you, I'm basically living off of it now. Now's your chance to get 20% off your purchase with code DailyWire at blackriflecoffee.com. Black Rifle Coffee's explosive coffees are roasted right here in the United States by a veteran-led team of expert roasters who take pride in serving coffee and culture to people who love America. Every purchase you make helps them further their mission to support veteran and first responder causes. Everything from getting funding and equipment to first responders to helping veterans get medical care. Black Rifle Coffee has a huge selection of dark roast, light roast, everything in between. Take the coffee quiz on their website and match with a blend perfectly tailored to your specific taste. Again, a portion of every purchase you make with Black Rifle Coffee goes towards supporting veteran and first responder causes. Your money goes a long way toward giving back to those who serve our nation. Head on over to blackriflecoffee.com right now. Use code DailyWire for 20% off America's coffee. That's blackriflecoffee.com, code DailyWire, blackriflecoffee.com, code DailyWire. And then Trump shifted into a more positive mode. And honestly, I thought that the speech was aspirational. I thought that it was uplifting. It had a lot of pragmatic suggestions about what he is going to do. But there was to the whole thing a positive American can-do attitude that's been missing for probably my entire adult lifetime in American politics. American politicians have not talked in totally aspirational terms about the things America is capable of doing for a very, very long time. Probably not during my lifetime. Honestly, I was a child when Ronald Reagan left office. That was probably the last time there was this sort of optimism in the United States. Here was President Trump saying the obvious thing, which is so true. I mean, I've said it directly to President Trump, that his life was spared by God to make America great again. There is no other way to read the near assassination of Donald Trump on stage live in front of a crowd when God, if not literally, almost literally, reached his hand down and turned Donald Trump's head a fraction of a degree and prevented his brains from splattering all over the stage. There's no other way to read that than what President Trump says right here.
Those who wish to stop our cause have tried to take my freedom and indeed to take my life. Just a few months ago in a beautiful Pennsylvania field, an assassin's bullet ripped through my ear. But I felt then, and believe even more so now, that my life was saved for a reason. I was saved by God to make America great again.
That, I think, is absolutely correct. And that is his job now. So again, there are many aspirational and memorable moments from the inaugural address. The most aspirational and memorable is when he talked about America's manifest destiny. And he talked about the idea that America was going to expand her territory. We're going to plant an American flag on Mars, he said. This, of course, must have excited Elon to no end. As we'll see, it absolutely did. Here was President Trump yesterday in his second inaugural address.
And we will pursue our manifest destiny into the stars, launching American astronauts to plant the stars and stripes on the planet Mars.
Again, he then talked about the possibility of taking back control of the Panama Canal, saying we did not build that canal so the Chinese can control it. That would be a repudiation of Jimmy Carter, who handed over the Panama Canal to Panama despite American efforts to build the Panama Canal. He talked about peace in the world. He said he's going to be a peacemaker and a unifier, which involves, as we say, peace through strength, the threat of force, the credible threat of force that establishes peace in the world, along with the diplomacy that is the softer side, the velvet glove in which lies the iron fist. Here's President Trump.
My proudest legacy will be that of a peacemaker and unifier. That's what I want to be, a peacemaker and a unifier. I'm pleased to say that as of yesterday, one day before I assumed office, the hostages in the Middle East are coming back home to their families.
Now, President Trump was asked yesterday about the hostage deal, and he said, listen, I don't think Hamas is trustworthy. He said, I'd be shocked if they get to phase 2. That, of course, was my suggestion the other day when the hostage deal became public, was that President Trump said to Israel the thing that Joe Biden would not, which is if you have to go back in, you go back in and you go back in hard. President Trump also spoke at length about bringing back free speech. Again, all of the taboos have now been shattered with regard to sort of the left's politically correct wall that they had built, saying that a boy can be a girl or else. That is gone. That is gone. It is an amazing thing that the President of the United States, as we'll see, had to sign an executive order to establish that 1 + 1 = 2, that boys are not girls and girls are not boys. It is amazing that you have to have the President of the United States talk about a return of free speech. But that was made necessary by the left and by Joe Biden. Here was President Trump yesterday.
After years and years of illegal and unconstitutional federal efforts to restrict free expression, I will also sign an executive order to immediately stop all government censorship and bring back free speech to America.
President Trump, of course, as I just suggested, also said, listen, there are 2 genders in the United States of America, as there have been for all of human history everywhere.
I will also end the government policy of trying to socially engineer race and gender into every aspect of public and private life. We will forge a society that is colorblind and merit-based. As of today, it will henceforth be the official policy of the United States government that there are only 2 genders, male and female.
That line was probably the biggest applause line of the entire inaugural speech, which demonstrates how far the left has gone completely off the rails. President Trump, of course, talked about the border in his inaugural address. This was his key issue in 2015, 2016. It remains his key issue 10 full years later because the left decided to open the border wide. Here's the President of the United States yesterday.
First, I will declare a national emergency at our southern border. All illegal entry will immediately be halted, and we will begin the process of returning millions and millions of criminal aliens back to the places from which they came. We will reinstate my Remain in Mexico policy. I will end the practice of catch and release. And I will send troops to the southern border to repel the disastrous invasion of our country.
Yep. That, of course, is what he was elected to do. And so, President Trump concluded his inaugural address with some glowing remarks about the future of American innovation, all of which was very inspiring. And then there was, I think, a great cultural moment. Carrie Underwood had been asked to come sing America the Beautiful, and the audio went out. And Carrie Underwood, who's a very talented person, just turned to the people who were handling the audio and said, give me the microphone and I'll just do it solo. I'll just do it a cappella. And she started to sing. And Carrie Underwood's a very talented person. It was a pretty great moment.
You know the words, help me out here. Oh, beautiful for spacious skies, for amber waves of grain, for purple mountain majesties above the fruited plain. America, America, God shed his grace on thee and crown thy good with brotherhood from sea to shining sea.
I mean, that's a great moment. That's a great moment. And again, if you're not feeling more optimistic this morning, you're doing it wrong. Even people who did not vote for Donald Trump understand that what we just went through over the past 4 years was a terrible, historically bad presidency. And that's the other side of this. The moment, and we were sitting overlooking the U.S. Capitol building yesterday while broadcasting, the moment that the helicopter took off, that was carrying Joe Biden out of American public life forever was one of the better moments of my life. It was truly a wonderful thing to see this terrible old man go. He's been an awful president of the United States. Here was footage of President Trump escorting Joe Biden to the helicopter. As I said on the show, the last time an American helicopter left a disaster this big, meaning what Joe Biden is leaving behind him, was Vietnam. Here was President Trump escorting former President Joe Biden to his helicopter where he saw him off. Bye. Catch you later. And man, the minute that he walked up the Marine One stairs for the final time, you could feel the burden being lifted from American hearts. Truly, truly. Well, folks, those were uplifting feelings as Donald Trump was sending Joe Biden off to his retirement. But, you know, there is something that's not quite as encouraging, and that's your sleep quality. I've tried everything over the years to improve my sleep. Setting strict bedtimes, putting my phone out of reach, get some downtime from the insane news cycle, even rearranging my bedroom before. But all these changes took constant effort. You didn't get a lot of result. Here's the thing. When I really wanted to change the way I sleep, I discovered it came down to some pretty simple upgrades like Boll and Branch. Their 100% organic cotton sheets really do the trick. From the first night, I could tell the difference. These aren't just any sheets. They have an incredible buttery softness that puts you in instant relaxation mode. And they get softer with every single wash. It's all their products, by the way. It's not just their sheets. It's also, for example, their throw blankets. I actually bring one on the road with me when I'm traveling to help my sleep quality. I didn't think it was possible. After a few months, those sheets feel even more luxurious than when I first got them. And I've tried other premium sheets before. Not even close. The best part, they're woven with the finest 100% organic cotton on earth, crafted by artisans who earn the pay and respect they deserve. So not only do you sleep better, you can feel good about your purchase as well. Now is your chance to change the way you sleep with Boll and Branch. Get 15% off plus free shipping on your first set of sheets at bollandbranch.com/Ben. That's Boll and Branch, BOLLAND, branch.com/Ben to save 15%. Exclusions apply. See site for details. Also, with the new year upon us, I've been thinking about my approach to planning and how it's evolved. These days, it's not just about setting career goals or making resolutions. It's about making those smart moves to protect what matters most, your family. That's why I want to tell you about Policy Genius. They're not an insurance company. They're actually the country's leading online insurance marketplace, making it incredibly simple to find and buy life insurance that gives your loved ones a financial safety net. If you're a homeowner the way I am, mortgage payments are a common cost that could be covered by life insurance. Policy Genius helps you find and compare all the plans that fit your priorities best. Here's what I love about Policy Genius. They combine easy-to-use digital tools with real licensed experts who help you every step of the way. Their team answers all your questions, handles the paperwork, advocates for you throughout the process. You can compare quotes from top insurers side by side, completely free, no hidden fees. And here's something you should know. With Policy Genius, you can find life insurance policies starting at just $292 per year for $1 million in coverage. Some options are 100% online and let you avoid those unnecessary medical exams. Even if you have life insurance through work, it might not cover all your family's needs or follow you to your next job. That's why thousands of happy customers have left 5-star reviews on Google and Trustpilot. So secure your families tomorrow. So you have peace of mind today. Head over to policygenius.com/Shapiro or click the link in your description to get those free life insurance quotes and see how much you could save. That's policygenius.com/Shapiro. On his way out, by the way, Joe Biden did more incalculable damage to the office. So he pardoned a wide series of people, including Dr. Anthony Fauci, who not only was involved in gain-of-function research in Wuhan, but also was involved in a deliberate smearing and cover-up of the new head of the NIH, Dr. Jay Bhattacharya, who was promoting actual good public policy during the pandemic opposed by Dr. Fauci. He also issued preemptive pardons for January 6th committee members, whether or not they lied about the evidence they had in their possession. General Mark Milley, who presided over the most humiliating withdrawal that America has ever experienced in Afghanistan. He then proceeded to issue a blanket pardon to all members of his own family, suggesting, of course, that he had to do that to stop President Trump. This is always the excuse. This is always the excuse. I have to do the bad thing so the other side won't do the bad thing when they get the power. And the reality is Joe Biden just wanted to do the bad thing. He always wanted to do the bad thing. The Biden family was, in fact, the Biden crime family. They've been clearing cash off Joe Biden's name for nigh on 5 decades at this point. Joe Biden had to pardon them. He had to. Not because he knew that they were innocent, but because he knew that there were crimes committed by members of his family. That is the real reason. In fact, here was Joseph R. Biden, former president of the United States, back when he was president in December 2020, saying there would be a bad precedent to issue preemptive pardons.
President Trump is reportedly considering a wave of preemptive pardons. Does this concern you? All these preemptive pardons?
Well, it concerns me in terms of what kind of precedent it sets and how the rest of the world looks at us as a nation of laws and justice. You're not going to see in our administration that kind of approach to pardons, nor are you going to see in our administration the approach to making policy by tweets. It's just going to be a totally different way in which we approach the justice system.
Unbelievable. That's what he had to say when he was president-elect in December 2020. He approached the justice system as a tool of revenge and then pardoned every member of his family he could find. Absolutely astonishing. By the way, in December of 2020, Joy Reid of MSNBC asked Adam Schiff, now the senator from California, if he had ever heard of an innocent person getting a preemptive pardon. Adam Schiff said no. Adam Schiff is one of the people who received a preemptive pardon from Joe Biden on his way out of office.
Have you ever heard of somebody getting a preemptive pardon who was innocent of all crime? Who's just an innocent person? Have you ever heard of that? Just somebody getting a blanket pardon and they're an innocent person?
But no, I think that in the cases, the very few cases where there have been prospective pardons, such as, Ford pardoning Nixon for whatever he may have done during the presidency, there was some idea of the potential criminal liability facing Richard Nixon. Here it's an effort not only to prospectively pardon people for things they have not yet been charged with and may never be charged with, but also it's the president's own family. It's people that have been covering up for the president in addition to his own family.
He said all the things in December 2020, and then Joe Biden did all the things. And by the way, if you like the proper workings of American government, once that glass is broken, you cannot unbreak the glass. Joe Biden broke the glass. I promise you, every president on his way out is now going to do this. Because Joe Biden not only broke the glass of using the DOJ to go after his political opponents for electoral reasons, he then pardoned his entire family. That glass is now broken. Well, he's gone. President Trump is in. Yesterday, President Trump signed a bunch of executive orders from an arena, and then he threw the pens into the crowd, which was hysterical and typically Trumpian. That was after he had danced with the village people. What can you say, man? What can you say? This America. This is America. And then President Trump walked into the Oval Office. He was asked by the press, "How do you feel today, Mr. President?" He said, "It's one of the better feelings I've ever had." Well, the feeling is mutual, Mr. President.
Mr. President, what was it like walking into the Oval Office this evening?
Oh, what a great feeling. One of the better feelings I've ever had.
Do you like this calm better now than in 2017?
Well, we're very experienced now. You would say nobody's ever had experience like I have. I've dealt with some very good people. I've dealt with some very bad people, and I know who the bad ones are and the good ones are. Don't forget, I was very successful in primarily the real estate business. And people used to say, who's worse, a politician or a vicious real estate developer? And I'd always say, the real estate developer is far worse. But after about 3 months and getting to know scum like Adam Schiff and other people like that, I said, no, actually, real estate people are quite nice by comparison.
So, President Trump back in office, and he was moving and moving fast. So, the first thing that President Trump did is he issued recensions of 78 Biden-era executive actions. That was his very first thing. He said, I'm just pulling it all back. Everything Joe Biden did is gone. And by the way, that is the mandate. The mandate is everything Joe Biden did, undo all those things. He was awful. There's no other, I'm going to keep repeating this until I'm blue in the face. There's no other way to read the election. Donald Trump was president. Joe Biden defeated him. And then the American people said, oops, nope, and took the old one and put him back in. To put this in personal terms, imagine how bad your second wife has to be in order for you to dump her to go back to your first wife. Okay, that is what America just did with President Trump and President Biden. And that means that President Trump has a mandate to get rid of all the trash that Joe Biden did. So The very first executive order issued by the President of the United States was a revocation of 78 executive orders issued by Joe Biden. That, by the way, is his number one job. Stop and reverse all the trash that Joe Biden did. He then proceeded to issue a wide series of executive orders. These were ready to go day one. Again, this is a very different administration. Donald Trump understands that not only does he have a mandate, he has a short period of time to get it done. He basically has 18 months to get what he wants to get done. He's going to do a lot of it via executive action because, unfortunately, that's now the way our government works, since the legislature is half a vestigial organ of government. Also, thanks to the rules of the House and the Senate, very unlikely that the president is going to be able to pass more than one or two at maximum, big bills over the course of the first 18 months before we get into re-elect time for many members of Congress for the midterms. Well, number one on his list was a very controversial move, but you knew it was coming, which was a pardon for nearly all of the 1,500 January 6th protesters / rioters. Now, many of those people were unjustifiably convicted, held in prison, under indictment. I have personal friends, people we work with, who were at the January 6th protest, who trespassed in the Capitol, and then were investigated years later by the DOJ for all of this. One of them gave a big hug last night in celebration at having been pardoned. He's on the pardon list from President Trump. Now, listen, I think that if you beat up a cop, then you should go to jail. With that said, this was a promise that Donald Trump made. He was obviously going to do it. Do I think it is good that people who beat up cops are going free? I do not. Do I think that all the other, and there are many other people, we're talking hundreds, if not over 1,000 other people who were in jail for reasons that were unjustifiable? Do I think that those people should have been in jail? No. Which is, of course, what J.D. Vance said last week. According to the Wall Street Journal, Trump's sweeping clemency delivered on his polarizing campaign pledge to pardon supporters who joined in what federal judges and prosecutors have called an attack on American democracy. The new president made the announcement after arriving at the White House, effectively wiping away 4 years of prosecutions, including more than 1,100 convictions. Now, by the way, prosecutors called this the largest investigation in U.S. history. That's insane. I'm sorry, that's crazy. January 6th, I think, was awful. I think it was bad for the country. I also think that to expend the resources to make that the largest investigation in American history after a summer where half of America burned during BLM summer was insanity, is insanity. I'm not going to agree with all those pardons. I'm going to agree with a lot of those pardons. And Joe Biden literally pardoned, he literally commuted the sentences of 37 out of 40 people on death row 2 weeks ago. So no, am I going to lose massive sleep over turnabout being fair play on this one? I'm not going to lose massive sleep, although I do not think that it is a wonderful thing if people beat up cops and then get to go free. Okay, meanwhile, the other executive orders came flowing freely. Those included an executive order to designate drug cartels foreign terrorist organizations. President Trump was asked about the possibility, by the way, that we might unleash SEAL Team 6 on members of the drug cartel. And he kind of half joked, said, well, you never know. According to the Associated Press, President Trump signed an executive order on Monday saying the United States would designate drug cartels as foreign terrorist organizations in a move that could push a militarized agenda for the border and Latin America. The order highlighted Mexican drug cartels and other Latin American criminal groups like Venezuelan gang Tren de Aragua and Salvadoran gang Mara Salvatrucha, that's MS-13. The order didn't list the groups by name, but cabinet secretaries will recommend groups for designation as terrorist organizations in the next 14 days. This is beyond time for this. These are, in fact, terrorist groups. I've been down to the border. I've watched as the drug cartels overwatched the American border with their own drones. This all has to end. It has to end. President Trump also put back in place the Remain in Mexico policy. That is a policy that says that if you come to the United States border and you apply for asylum, claiming that you're a victim of persecution in your home country, that instead of you being admitted to the United States with a court date months later, so you can disappear into the interior, instead you wait in Mexico for us to actually process your claim. That went back into place yesterday. The CBP One app, which is a phone app that sets all of these sort of appointments up and facilitates the entry of people who are claiming asylum into the country, that was shut down yesterday. Barriers went back up along the border. The Trump wall is most certainly going to happen during the course of this second term for the president. And President Trump issued an executive order that will have to be adjudicated in court, revoking what's called birthright citizenship. We'll get into that and the legal vagaries surrounding it in 1 second. First, you watched our exclusive inauguration coverage from the weekend through the historic day in D.C. right here on Daily Wire Plus. We were all over Washington exclusive coverage, uncensored, unfiltered, ad-free, exactly how we intend it to be. The Daily Wire doesn't just report the news. We go straight to the center of it and give you the facts. Live daily shows from the most trusted voices in conservative media. Groundbreaking, culture-shaping, premium content, hit movies, explosive documentaries, series that actually matter. If you're not a Daily Wire Plus member yet, what are you doing? Now's your moment. Get 47% off as we honor the 47th president of the United States. It is dawn in America. Use code 47 at checkout. Be part of it. That's 47% off when you go to dailywire.com/subscribe. Don't forget, code 47 for 47% off at dailywire.com/subscribe. Okay, meanwhile, President Trump's most controversial executive order yesterday was an executive order directed at ending birthright citizenship. Birthright citizenship is the notion under American law that if you are in the United States illegally, legally, temporarily, if you drop a baby in the United States, that baby is an American citizen. That's what birthright citizenship means. So if you're an illegal immigrant and you have a baby in the United States, that baby, even if you are not here legally, becomes an American citizen automatically. That is a misread of the law. It is clearly a misread of the Constitution of the United States. The actual provision, which is the 14th Amendment, says, quote, all persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the United States and of the state wherein they reside. So it is true that if you are a citizen, wife is a citizen, if you have a baby, baby's a citizen. But there is an extra phrase in that provision of the 14th Amendment. That extra phrase is, and subject to the jurisdiction thereof, right? If you just want to say all persons born in the United States are American citizens, just say it. That's not what the Constitution says. It says born or naturalized and subject to the jurisdiction thereof. What is this meant to exclude? It's meant to exclude people who are foreign citizens who are not here permanently. That's what it is meant to exclude. Illegal immigrants, people here on temporary visas or work visas, people who are here as ambassadors and subject to the jurisdiction of their home country, right? That's what it means. Because subject to the jurisdiction doesn't just mean that if you hit somebody with a car, you go to jail in America. It means that you, in fact, are here on a permanent status. Then if you have a baby, your baby is an American citizen. But if not, then not. And that is precisely what the White House is now claiming. They say the 14th Amendment has always excluded from birthright citizenship persons who are born in the United States but not subject to the jurisdiction thereof. Among the categories of individuals born in the U.S. and not subject to the jurisdiction thereof, the privilege of U.S. citizenship does not automatically extend to persons born in the United States when, for example, that person's mother was unlawfully present in the U.S. and the father was not a U.S. citizen or lawful permanent resident at the time of said person's birth, or when that person's mother's presence in the United States at the time of said person's birth was lawful but temporary, such as but not limited to visiting the United States under auspices of the visa waiver program or visiting on a student, work, or tourist visa, and the father was not a United States citizen or lawful permanent resident at the time of said person's birth. Now, again, this is not going to be retroactive. It doesn't make people not citizens anymore. What it does do is say prospectively, this is how the law will be interpreted. Now, this is going to be adjudicated all the way up to the Supreme Court. And this is a proper interpretation of the law. It just is. Okay, there is nothing particularly shocking about this. What is shocking is the idea that if you get caught in New York on a stopover flight from, say, Haiti to Canada, and in the airport you give birth, that your kid is now an American citizen. That's a bizarre, bizarre idea, and certainly was not intended by the people who wrote the 14th Amendment to the The 14th Amendment was designed to ensure that black Americans, that slaves, former slaves, were citizens of the United States because they were born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof. There was no other jurisdiction to which they were subject. That is what the 14th Amendment was designed to do, extend all of the privileges and immunities of citizenship to the former slaves. That's what the 14th Amendment was. Extending that to people who fly through LAX and drop a baby, that is not what it was for, just legally speaking. So we'll see how that's adjudicated at the Supreme Court level. It's an audacious move by the Trump administration. They also issued an executive order to end DEI. That, of course, is deeply necessary. President Trump had actually spoken about that in his speech, in his inaugural. He talked about the end of DEI and the return of the meritocracy, which is a huge issue for him. The executive order reads, the Biden administration forced illegal and immoral discrimination programs going by the name diversity, equity, and inclusion into virtually all aspects of the federal government in areas ranging from airline safety to the military. And then they say, well, this is gone. That ends today. Americans deserve a government committed to serving every person with equal dignity and respect and to expanding precious taxpayer resources on making America great. That is exactly correct. We are also going to no longer spend our money on the World Health Organization, a Chinese-controlled, ridiculous organization that allowed the COVID pandemic to spread globally. President Trump turned to an aide as he began to sign the executive order, and he said, that's a big one. The text of the executive order cites the organization's mishandling of COVID-19. Absolutely appropriate. The WHO is a sham, just like most of these international organizations, and a joke, and we should not be funding it. President Trump issued an executive order to target the weaponization of government as well. An investigation was initiated into every aspect of American government, reviewing law enforcement and intelligence. Trump's executive order, quote, describes actions that appear more oriented toward inflicting political pain than toward pursuing actual justice. And so the AG will be directed to review the work of all the law enforcement agencies to ensure there is no deliberate political targeting. The executive order creating the Elon Musk-led Department of Governmental Efficiency was also pushed forward. There will be lawsuits in an attempt to stop that, say it's not fully governmental. I doubt that those lawsuits will hold any water in the end. Now, there are a couple executive orders that I particularly like. The one extending the TikTok ban is not something I'm fond of. I'm not sure precisely why President Trump is pushing the extension of the TikTok ban, other than what I'm hoping is that he wants a deal. He wants it. This is what he does. Carrots and sticks. The stick is, I'm not going to extend the TikTok ban unless you cut a deal to divest yourself of Chinese ownership. That is the optimistic view. A document posted on the White House website said that Trump was instructing the AG not to enforce the ban for a period of 75 days from today to allow my administration an opportunity to determine the appropriate course forward in an orderly way that protects national security while avoiding an abrupt shutdown of a communications platform used by millions of Americans. Now, if this ends with Chinese control of TikTok, that will be a mistake by President Trump. I'm very hopeful that that's not how this will, in fact, end. President Trump, on the staffing side, is doing some pretty impressive things. He froze civilian hiring in the federal government. He's imposing extra scrutiny on IRS hiring. The freeze will lift for every agency except the IRS at a certain point. It's a 90-day freeze, while the Office of Management and Budget and DOJ write a plan to shrink the federal workforce. Totally appropriate. He also, more importantly, reinstated Schedule F. So Schedule F is the ability of the President of the United States to fire people inside the executive branch. It should be a no-brainer. Constitutionally speaking, if you are in the executive agencies, you work for the President of the United States, and at his pleasure, that's the unitary executive theory, you should be fireable by the President. That's what Schedule F does. The Biden administration tried to stop this last year. They passed a rule designed to prevent Trump from reinstating Schedule F. But President Trump is going to reinstate that with the Supreme Court the way that it is. I would be shocked if this is not upheld as well. It should be. Also, President Trump said all the federal workers have to go back to work, which is pretty amazing since only 6% of federal workers show up to work in person at this point. The cush jobs are over. If you are working for the federal government, you work for the taxpayer, go to work. Go to work. On the most fun side, President Trump issued an executive order to rename the Gulf of Mexico the Gulf of America and to rename Mount Denali in Alaska back to its American name, Mount McKinley. Lisa Murkowski was upset about the renaming of the Gulf of America and Mount McKinley in particular. She's upset about Mount McKinley because she's from Alaska. And she put up a post I strongly disagree with the president's decision on Denali, our nation's tallest mountain, which has been called Denali for thousands of years, must continue to be known by the rightful name bestowed by Alaska's Cayucon Athabascans, who have stewarded the land since time immemorial. Wrong. We own it. We can call it whatever we damned well please. President Trump later today is expected to announce a massive infrastructure project. We can only hope that it will be the incorporation of Greenland into the United States. On the foreign policy front, President Trump initiated a 90-day review into all foreign aid, saying that if it does not align with America's purposes, it will not be reinstated. That is presumably directed at the UNRWA, the UN Relief and Works Agency, which is just a front group for Hamas. President Trump also on the foreign policy front killed the sanctions that Joe Biden had put on people, Jews living in Judea and Samaria. So overall, a massive slate of actions from President Trump, a massively important slate of actions from President Trump. And, it is a new day, man. It is a new day. All right, guys, coming up, we'll get into more of the left-wing media just not having a solid day. If you're not a member, become a member. Use code Shapiro at checkout for 2 months free on all annual plans. Click that link in the description and join us.